All right, we are now live, a couple minutes late, but that's show business, right? But welcome to the show, everyone. It seems that Social Security's retirement trust fund is set to run totally dry, almost totally dry, by the year 2032, a year earlier than predicted originally, allegedly due to Trump's tax cuts, lower birth rates, and lower net immigration. How on earth did we get here? And how do we fix this without unfairly burdening younger generations? And unfortunately, for a second week in a row, we have news about violent attacks on UK citizens by recent immigrants. This one came with a horrifying video of a man's head being nearly sawn off in the middle of a neighborhood street. The question we have is this: where is the line between government overreach and feckless negligence? And for Unhinged, Democrat staffers are scrambling to explain away the skeletons they missed in Graham Platner's closet. It's pretty painful to listen to. You will see what I mean. All of this on episode 540 of the In the Tank podcast.
The firm sent us a thing, and it had some of the posts, but it didn't have all of them.
Yikes. Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. I am Linnea Lucan, your host, and as always, we also have Jim Lakely, Vice President and Director of Communications at the Heartland Institute. He made that stinger there, and he also is the one who brought us our Unhinged this week, much to the pain of my ears. And also Sam Karnick, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute, and Chris Talgo, welcome back, Editorial Director and Socialism Research Fellow. All right, we also have in the background today guest producer Silas Pearson in the background, keeping the show moving along, so be nice to him. All right, before we get started, if you want to support the show, you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate there. Please also click the thumbs up to like this video. I see you guys watching. We have a lot of people from the Southeast in the chat today, I noticed. Hello, welcome. My weather report says that it feels like 115, and I don't think that's right. But you guys all watching can all click the thumbs up button. And remember that sharing this also helps to break through some of YouTube suppression, and also on x.com would help us out a little bit too. That'd be fun. Even just leaving a comment helps. And if you're an audio listener, you can help us out by leaving a nice review on whatever platform you're using. All right, I'm going to launch right into it. First topic on Unhinged, we have these Ivy League staffers, one from Harvard and one from Yale and UC Berkeley, I believe. It is, yeah, that says something, who recruited Platner, are struggling to explain how they overlooked so much. These people are both from the Democratic Socialists of America, and they are the ones who approached Graham Oyster Group and Fuhrer, Platner, that joke comes from Steve Guest, by the way, to challenge Susan Collins for her Senate seat in Maine. So let's take a listen here.
Yeah, hold on. So the actual video
You
should be that
hadn't
one. Yeah,
vetted
the sound is
Platner. You hadn't done a full scrub of who he is. How did you go about vetting him? And why did you?
We paid a nice firm a whole chunk of money and got some stuff back. Some of what you've seen on the news we got back. Other stuff we didn't.
Did the vetting process turn up the tattoo that became so controversial?
No.
The Reddit posts, did that turn up in the vetting process?
The firm sent us a thing, and it had some of the posts, but it didn't have all of them.
And what did you think about that? How did you think your way through the fact that he had posted these things on social media?
I said none of this will or should stop him from becoming a U.S. Senator.
And what was
Clearly
your thinking
voters
there?
agree. I think if what the voters wanted were people who were grown in vats and had never done or said anything that they might regret their entire lives, we'd have a very different country. Part of our thesis here is that people do not want their candidates grown in vats. They want people who are real human beings, and they want people who do not look and sound like the vat-grown people who've been leading this country off a cliff for the last century. And that was Graham.
Just days after this interview, more details about Platner's past emerged.
Boy, that kind of hurts to listen to. He is attempting to, I don't know, disappear into like a black hole in the back of his throat, it sounds like, to escape that interview. But Jim, you brought this to us. You inflicted this on us. Explain yourself.
Well, I know that vocal fry is one of your absolute number one pet peeves, so I couldn't resist. I've never heard a male human being, allegedly, be able to talk like that, with vocal fry in the back of your throat and with uptalk with it as well. And the reason I brought this in to this show is that those two people consider themselves our social, moral, and intellectual betters. And they're the ones who vetted Graham Platner, the guy with the Yahtzee tattoo. I don't want to get us banned here, on his chest, from the camps in Germany where you would concentrate a lot. They wore those kinds of tattoos. Those are the people that vetted him, who put him forward to take down the most moderate Republican, milquetoast Republican, probably votes with the Democrats at least 25 or 40% of the time, out in Maine. And these people, they go to work. These are the people in our elite schools, connections, and apparently don't have to have a lot of talent, including speaking publicly. We're speaking like a human being, not like an avatar of a human being done by AI from 10 years ago, before it even existed. So this I just couldn't believe it. That it's not only that two Ivy League people. I could believe two Ivy League people picked a fake working class socialist and well, as we're finding out, somebody who is credibly accused of abuse of women, who was sexting other women like months after he was married. This a absolute horrible human being. I can believe that Ivy League educated people would pick him. What I couldn't believe was kind of how they looked and how they sounded. And again, these people think they should have their hands full time on the controls of the government. And I just think it's a good reminder of who these people are.
Yeah, well, it certainly is not very much comfort at all that these people, Democratic Socialists of America nowadays are, barely not total tankies, like, apologists for the brutal regimes of communism. It's very much not a comfort that these are the types of people who would happily see us marching into camps ourselves into the gulag. So very, very, very sad stuff. Does anybody else have, I want to move kind of quick on this one, but it was just too cringe. We could not have it for Unhinged. Nope. No other commentary? Okay, then we can get right into it. And I know Sam is excited for this next topic. So Social Security is apparently close to exhausted. I've been hearing that my entire life. I'm sure everyone here has been hearing that their entire lives. This is a pretty big topic. It's also so far from my area of expertise, but that is why we have Sam Karnick here. But in a nutshell, I have this explanation by Reuters via Yahoo News. U.S. Social Security Trust Fund set for 2032 insolvency report finds.
It's literally
U.S. Social Security.
It's never happened before.
Chris, you guys are on screen. The U.S. Social Security Trust Fund will run out of money in late 2032, earlier than previously forecast, in part because of President Donald Trump's signature tax law enacted last year. A Social Security Administration annual report projected the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund that finances retirement benefits will become depleted and no longer able to pay 100% of scheduled benefits in the fourth quarter of 2032, up from the first quarter of 2033 projected from the 2025 report. At that time, the fund's projected income will be sufficient to pay just 78% of scheduled benefits. And reserves for those receiving long-term disability payments should remain positive, though. But the two funds combined, however, will reach insolvency in the third quarter of 2034, also unchanged from a year ago. But at that time, the combined fund will also have income sufficient to pay just 83% of scheduled benefits. The report says that the tax cuts enacted by Trump and the Republican Congress last year resulted in less income tax paid on Social Security, and also said that lower U.S. birth rates and lower net immigration also contributed. All right. Social Security became law in 1935, part of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal. And since then, it's been a source of anxiety for everyone forever. My generation was told in school that we would never see benefits from the retirement program. And that's part of why it's important for all of us to plan for retirement outside of government's meager handouts. Playing the stock markets or having a good savings plan can be part of that, but so are physical assets like property or precious metals. All right. And with that, a lot of people in the conservative, libertarian, and in emergency prep spaces will hit you with ads for buying precious metals. They're not wrong that they're a good investment, but you do want to be careful about who you buy your metals from. At In the Tank, we trust Advisor Metals over all of the other guys, and that's because we know that Ira Bershatsky, the owner and managing member of Advisor Metals, is a great friend of liberty and has decades of experience in precious metals, and is the only person in the physical precious metals industry who has the Commodities Futures Trading Commission federal registration. What that means is that everything Ira or a member of his team says to you has to be factual. So there's no sketchy sales pitch or bait and switch. He is held to the highest ethical standards, and there is full transparency, which is far too lacking in other places, including in our own Social Security department. If you want to diversify your investment portfolio and your savings, if you are planning for Social Security never ever panning out for you in any way whatsoever, and you are concerned about economic uncertainty, if you want a tangible asset that is easy to buy and sell, you can secure your assets with a wide range of physical precious metals by getting in touch with our friend Ira at Advisor Metals. Ira will make it very easy for you. So please visit climaterealismshow.com/metals, and you can leave your information for Ira and get started with investing in precious metals and expand your current portfolio. Go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. And when you talk to Ira, make sure you let him know that we are the ones who sent you. That helps us while you're helping your financial future by diversifying with precious metals from Advisor Metals. How about that one? How about that? All right.
Top 10.
But with that aside, because that took me a minute, I'll reiterate the main points of this report in case anyone already forgot. So by late 2032, at current spending and income rates, Social Security will no longer be able to pay out 100% of benefits. Social Security office blames tax cuts, lower birth rates, and immigration declining. Sam, it's logical that tax cuts would put a dent in the fund, obviously, because that's how it's funded. But looming insolvency, predates Trump by an awful lot, though, doesn't it? And, should Trump's policy, should he be making tax cut decisions based on Social Security?
Absolutely not. The Social Security is funded by the payroll tax. And the payroll tax it's funny how they do this. You have a 7.5% pull out of your salary by the government before you get it. And there's also 7.5% that your employer, quote unquote, contributes. So that's really 15% that's coming out of your salary because your employer isn't saying, yes, I will pay this person exactly what I think they should get. And then I'll just throw 7.5% in on my own just for laughs. They don't do that. So what's happening is you're paying 15% of your salary, your wages, all the time into the Social Security fund. So it goes into the fund. What happens then is that this money is supposed to be sitting there allocated for Social Security. Now, there's the issue of, is it a pay-as-you-go system or is it a true trust fund? It is the former disguised as the latter. So what they do is they say, well, there's a trust fund there, but that trust fund is actually just full of IOUs. What it does is it says that you contributed, and so let's say the baby boomers and Gen X and now the millennials and even Gen Z have contributed X amount of dollars into the fund over the course of the last 5 years. All right. So you would think that there would be that much money just sitting in the treasury somewhere, but that's not what happens. Is what they do is the federal government borrows that money to spend it. And so they can overspend, and then they basically put IOUs into the fund. Now, when you have a system like that, it's basically a pay-as-you-go system, but as I say, it's disguised as a trust fund. And what happens there? Because, for example, if you were to say to your bank, "Look, I'm going to deposit money, and then I'm going to spend it, but you're going to pretend it's still there," your bank will tell you, "We're not doing that." No, but the public has not had apparently the ability to tell the government, "We're not doing that." Okay, so that's what happens. So it is basically a pay-as-you-go system. So what's going on though is that you're creating obligations that we're going to pay the recipients this much down the road, and those obligations are in statute. They're under the law. We have to pay them, and that's why you call Social Security an entitlement. So when you do that, though, then you have to find the money somehow, because you didn't just put it in the bank and let it earn interest and pay out. Now, the way people save for retirement, normal people, not people who are depending on government, the way people save for retirement or save for anything is you put the money in the bank, and then the bank invests it, or you put it in investments yourself. And those investments are in the private sector. The private sector produces profits on what you put in. And the reason it does that is because people want the things that the private sector produces. If you put it into government, what happens is it just sits there, and the government then declares later what they think it's worth, what they think what you put in is worth. If you save it yourself, then you're getting you're getting the profit on what you put in. If the government saves it for you, you're getting whatever the taxpayers and voters at that time say you can get. So we have a system where in 2032, the government has said you will get X amount, but we only are going to have 78% of that. So you're going to get your benefits cut by 22%. Everybody in the system is going to get their benefits cut by more than 1/5, or other things are going to happen. Now, the options that the government has is that they could just cut your benefits by 22%. They could raise the payroll tax. They could borrow more money. They could reduce benefits in other ways, extend the retirement age, for example, which reduces benefits, and they could cut other spending. Most of those things are either inflationary or recessionary or both. So they don't want to do any of those things. So what they ideally, I think what they would like to do is be able to inflate it away, is give you the nominal 100%, but have inflated away 22% of it in the next 6 years. And then they can say, we've fulfilled our obligation to you. And it's those doggone big businesses that are charging too much. Go complain to them. The whole thing is obviously a scam, and a pretty disgusting one, because it is so big and because people count on this money. And
Yeah.
then the other element that is so important is that the government had said, we are taking this money from you. And I'm putting in parentheses because they don't say it explicitly. Let's put it in brackets. By force. We're taking this money from you by threat of force, and we're saving it for you. So you didn't have any choice in the system. And everybody says, well, the baby boomers all voted for this and so forth. I don't know who voted for what. Certainly the lost generation voted for this, and the so-called greatest generation, which I think is one of the worst generations ever, voted for all this. But I don't think anyone, they voted for the politicians that did this, but I don't think anyone, looked at the numbers and said, hey, this is what Social Security is going to do. That's great. I will either have my benefits inflated away, or they'll be cut, or whatever. Nobody wanted that. So this was all a scam created by the government, and now we're all going to suffer because of it. There are some ways out, though, which we may want to which we'll certainly want to discuss here. But that's the overview. And if it sounds a little complicated, it is because it is. But the simple version of it is it's a scam, and it's all meant to make it look like you're going to get a lot of money when you're not.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, like I said, this was one of those things that was brought in for the New Deal by FDR, knowing that FDR is possibly one of the least favorite presidents of this organization, and many like it. I mean, was it always anticipated from the very beginning that this was going to happen, that it was going to run out eventually?
No, I think calling it a scam is much too harsh, because what happened was it was begun during the Great Depression, when people did not have, old age insurance, and it was predicated on the American population growing. And like Sam said, when the baby boomer generation came and went, they were a huge bulge, and there aren't enough Gen X or Gen Y, Gen Z, whatever, to support the now retiring baby boomer generation. So to me, this is much more of a math problem. And there are many possible solutions, and the earlier we do them, the better, whether it's allowing people to opt out or moving the retirement age. There's all sorts of things that can be done. The Congress has not had the willpower to do it. Even 20 or so years ago, I'm sure Jim and Sam remember this, George W. Bush talked about possibly privatizing it, and everyone went insane on the other side of the aisle. So that was 20 something years ago, before we were even near the mess we're in now. And demographically, it's obviously getting, worse. So I would really appreciate it if Congress and the president would begin a plan to address this for people in our generation, Linnea, because you and me have been paying into the system for a very long time. And we, I think, are the ones who are on the, probably on, the threat of getting, like not even half of what we paid into the system. So the earlier you can address this, the better for the younger people who, did pay into the system. And for those who are near retirement, I mean, I don't think that we should slice benefits for them. I think that this should be done so that people have at least a decade or so to make, alternative means. So don't depend on Social Security. I mean, my parents paid into Social Security their entire lives, and I'll tell you that is not enough money to sustain, a couple, let alone one person. It's just not. And I really hope that people in our generation, Linnea, like you mentioned earlier, do have backup retirement plans, or be prepared to work, until you're, pretty late in life.
Yeah.
Well, this is why Social Security was a bad idea from the beginning. And the thing is, it is an extremely destructive system, because it undermines the family. It undermines your long-term planning as an individual. It undermines personal character, because you need to develop all those things if you are going to be able to support yourself through life. But if the government keeps telling you that, look, if things go wrong in your life somehow, they're just, it's all by accident. You're not responsible for anything. We'll take care of it. Don't you worry about it. Well, people aren't going to worry about it. And then what's going to happen is you get a thing like a demographic bulge, and then you say, oh my gosh, what happened? Well, what happened was that this didn't make sense in the first place, and it was unconstitutional from the very beginning. It's completely unconstitutional. It's nowhere listed in the Constitution as an enumerated power. It's not even an implied power. It's not an implied power. How is this a regulation of interstate commerce? That's the only place you can get it into the Constitution. It's not, and it doesn't promote the general welfare.
That's what was used to justify the
right, but it destroys the general welfare, and right. People pointed that out at the time that it would do that, and they have been proven to be right. Now we're probably going to get through this, and there are a couple of ways to do it, and one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to cut other spending and devote that money to Social Security. The reason you're going to have to do that is because our government operates on Keynesian principles, which is that if you don't have enough consumer spending, we're all going to go broke, because then there won't be any kind of production going on. Now, that's the opposite of the way things work, but that's what we will get. So you will get cuts. I think a lot of the cuts will come from means testing, where they'll say, well, you're too rich to get Social Security, which is dishonest and disgusting, because you said before, well, you're not so rich that we can't take it from you by force and threat of force. But now we're not going to give it back to you. What we took from you by force, the deal was that we will give it back to you, but now we're not going to do that. And then people say, well, they're getting a lot more than they put in. They're getting a lot more than they put in. Some people are. But what the reality is that if you had invested this just in absolute, the simplest thing, the stock market indexes, okay? If you had invested this, you'd have got at least twice, 3 times as much as what Social Security is giving you. So they're going to rip off the people who put in the most into the system. That's number one. There you go, Jim, likely. They're going to rip off the people who put the most into the system. Number one. The other thing that they'll have to do, though, is they will have to cut other spending, because the people who put the most into the system, a lot of those are like PR people and so forth, like Jim Blakely. So there will be a bit of a controversy over that. But the big thing is that they're going to have to cut other spending. Defense spending has gone up an incredible amount over the last 6 years. Other entitlement spending has gone up an incredible amount. And that actually could be one thing that's helped save the system, so that Gen Z and the millennials get a little something at least, because you have to get through the bump. You have to get through the baby boom bump. And well, the first baby boomers, what are they? They're 80 years old now, right? So you're going to have fewer and fewer of them. And to put this in the nicest way possible, but that's really, it's a numbers thing. You brought it up, Chris. It's your fault. But you're going to have fewer and fewer of them. So ultimately, the problem is solved. But what you're going to have to do is you have to get through that problem, that bump. So you're going to, if you cut other spending, then you can devote that to shoring up the system. So you're cutting what you give out to people. You're going to have to raise my suggestion, which is in a piece that will be appearing shortly. So you're getting the news before it happens. My suggestion, they've been cutting the retirement age, or they've been raising the retirement age when you can get your full benefits by 2 months every year for the last few years. That stopped in 2026. Now, so the trustees of Social Security are blaming it on the Trump tax cuts and not enough immigrants. I don't know that illegal immigrants pay a heck of a lot of Social Security, but okay, we'll play your game. We'll just take your assumptions and test that, and that so that you're not getting and the low birth rates. People being born today paying Social Security, these are some hardworking toddlers, But so they're blaming it on all those things when in fact what it really is that they have not increased the retirement age fast enough. They should really. My recommendation is they should. I'm going to get a lot of heat from this, but raise the retirement age a full year every year for the next 6 years. I'm letting that sink in a little bit. But the other part is this. We have an incredible opportunity to get reform. We've never had an opportunity like this. It's the biggest opportunity ever. But seriously, all the entitlement fraud that we're hearing about, which is just, the top of the iceberg, very tip of the iceberg. It's a heavy iceberg. All the entitlement fraud we're hearing about is pretty substantial. And there's way more than that. So what we could do is say this. Congress and the president say, we're authorizing the White House to do a deep dive on entitlement fraud and get it done. Get everybody all across the country in any entitlement. Social Security too. Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, all of this. There's a ton of fraud there. And every nickel that's saved goes into the Social Security Trust Fund. So if you make that deal, you know who's going to love that? Jim Lakely's going to love that. The Gen X is going to love that because here's the deal. You're either going to lose 22% or possibly all of your Social Security for the rest of your life, or all of it because the system just collapses and the government cannot borrow any money anymore, and so they can't spend anything because it's almost all borrowed at this point. They're just borrowing money. So we take in $4 trillion and spend $7 trillion. That's not a workable system. So you're telling Gen X in particular, and then the later generations that you really are going to get nothing. You're getting nothing unless we do this. If we get rid of this fraud, we can save the system. So this is a new idea that I've written up, and it should be going out to the public shortly, getting published somewheres. And you can read about it when it arrives, but you're getting it before it becomes the news here. So this is very clever of you to listen.
I knew you had no strong feelings about this whatsoever, Sam. So Chris, Ed Hodson over on Facebook says that Social Security became a scam when the structure allowed the government to spend the Social Security taxes rather than invest it in assets that can be used to pay the promised benefits. What would your take on that be?
It was never intended to do that. So he's actually incorrect on that. I would also say that another solution is to grow our way out of this. And I know that a lot of Americans have different opinions on artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence, like it or not, is coming, and it is probably going to be one of the most productive, revolutions in modern history. So this could completely revolutionize our economy, and it could boost productivity into a realm that we can't even imagine right now. That could actually solve this. So I'm not a gloom and doom guy on this, because I actually do have faith in the American system and in the free market economy that it will that we at least can grow our way out of this problem.
Sam, to address you, because I am the Gen X representative. I thought you're late Gen or early Gen X as well. I'm not sure, but nobody in my literally nobody I know nobody my age has ever thought they were ever going to get a cent out of Social Security. Any money they get out of Social Security when they retire, and retirement age, I guess, is coming up. I mean, I'm 55, so I mean, I plan to die at my desk like a hero at the age of 90. But if I do actually want to retire, that's 15 years off, maybe, I don't know. But nobody, none of my peers, we never talk about Social Security as if it's going to be there, as if we're counting on it to sustain us in retirement. We have 401ks, we have Roth IRAs. We had to plan and have to plan for our own retirement and have known that for a long time. Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. It's the world's biggest Ponzi scheme, and you can't fix a Ponzi scheme. You can only end it, and the Ponzi scheme needs to end. And if I'm okay with raising the retirement age. This whole idea that we're going to take money that we're going to save from fraud and abuse in, say, the Medicaid system or Medicare or any of these places, and then put that into the Social Security Trust Fund. The word Social Security Trust Fund triggers me, Sam. There is no trust fund. There's never been a trust fund. Everybody knows this. Al Gore used to talk about the lockbox, the Social Security. Everybody knows it's a complete Ponzi scheme. And the only way, you have to end it. You can't fix it. You can't tweak it. It has to end. And Chris brought this up. I actually was covering the White House for the Washington Times when George W. Bush won his second term. I was in the room in the post-election press conference right there. I got to ask a question that day. And he said in that press conference, he says, I've earned a lot of political capital and I plan to spend it. And he was going to spend it all on privatizing Social Security, which is actually not what he was going to do. The Democrats were doing backflips. They couldn't wait to run on that for a long time. But the plan, the leading proposal out there was to to allow younger workers like me at that time. I was still pretty much a younger worker. I was in my early 30s. And it was to allow us to take some of our Social Security Ponzi scam money and invest it into private accounts so that we could grow our own wealth over here, in addition to any 401ks we have with our employer, and still be contributing to the system. It was probably 70-30 to contribute to the system to make sure that the elderly people today get their Social Security checks. If that was done 20 years ago, we wouldn't be in this problem. In fact, there probably wouldn't even be an end point to Social Security. You could maintain the system all the way through. But no, the politics in this country, especially from the Democrats, they attack, said they're going to throw Granny out in the street, and we've seen they campaigned on this for a decade after George Bush proposed that. And of course, it went nowhere. I don't even believe a single bill was proposed to make this happen. So it was a complete waste. But it was the only real chance we've had in the last 25 years to not fix the Ponzi scheme, but to eventually end the Ponzi scheme so that, eventually another 20 years from now, Social Security could actually be gone. It'd be like the Civil War Widows Fund. There'd be very few people alive left that would be collecting Social Security, while the rest of the people would have had an actual good retirement that would have injected more money into the investment, into the economy. There's all sorts of good positive things about this. But it's not going to happen. So yeah, I don't expect to get anything. If I get $5 a month out of Social Security, I consider that pretty good, because I've never expected any of it. Of course, Linnea, it's even worse for you. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll never forget. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that there is another solution that just came to my mind. So when I was a teacher, you look at a state like Illinois, where they say that they're going to give you a benefit or a pension that's going to sustain you for the rest of your life. And what they've noticed is that is woefully they can't maintain it. So then when I was a teacher in South Carolina, they said, well, we'll let you have a couple $1,000s per year and you can put it into an account, and that is your account. It's defined benefit versus defined contribution. If we offer people the decision to make that choice for themselves, most of the young people who were teaching with me in South Carolina said, well, I definitely want to go down the road of I get a lump sum per year and then I can just put that into a tax-free account. That's another way that you can solve this. You can give people different options. It's that the one size fits all, everybody gets the same Social Security formula that I think is part of the problem. And, as we know, more options, more choices are almost always better because people don't always have the same circumstances. So if someone wants to take the option of, hey, you know what, I'm super healthy, I want to start taking it when I'm later and I might get a greater payout, then give them options. So what I'm saying is we shouldn't just throw the whole system away, because I do think that so many Americans, including my parents, they have, they depend on it, full stop. And you can't just pull the rug out from under those people. And I think it would be really immoral to do that for people who are on the cusp of retiring. So even people within that 10-year retirement window. But for people like me who still have a long time left that I can still, make alternative plans, I think that what they should do is offer more choices.
My recommendations include moving things toward a privatized system, which has been done successfully in other countries. For example, Chile has a very successful system. And I absolutely sympathize with the situation of people who are retired, like your parents, or about to retire. The problem is you can't get the money. You can't we can't just want it and then it happens.
No, but see, the thing
it's going
for
to
people like my dad, who paid in his entire career and who's now in his early 80s and really does depend on that, that would be a sin to say, well, we're going to screw you now. So anyone who's on it or who's going to be on it, I would just say arbitrarily within the next 5 to 10 years, man, we made a promise to them. We have to keep that promise. Full stop, no matter what. It's the people who are younger, I'll include myself in that. And I have been trying my best to have alternative retirement planning, because I don't think I'm going to get the full Social Security. But Sam, this is also about personal responsibility. Americans do need to practice self-responsibility. And instead of looking for the government, there's so many other ways you can do this. You can depend on family. Back in the day, people didn't just say to their parents, oh, you're on your own now. What happened? They brought them back into their family. I know that that's like really shunned in today's world, but you know what? A lot of people in my generation are helping their parents, and that's something that we have to do. And if you were to take Social Security out of that equation, you would just be pulling the rug out from under them. And I cannot in any way support that.
Well, Chris, in my upcoming article, as you know, having edited it, I make that point that the major sticking point for reform is the fact that these promises were made to people. The government made these promises to people, and they were not able to keep those promises. The central issue, though, is that you have to get the money to do this, and the way you get money is by investing it in the private sector. And what we've been doing, and that's what moving to a more privatized system would do. We've been investing in government instead. The worst investment you can make is in government, especially any of it that's beyond basic infrastructure and real needed national defense and the like. So we are going to have to make serious cuts in other spending in order to save that 22% that's going to be missing on that date. And yes, we have to make those decisions right now. The easiest one, in my view, is to dedicate an effort, a massive effort, to root out fraud in all of the federal government, in every area, including defense, whatever it is, all the NGOs that we non-government organizations that promote communism and other crazy things in our country. Root all that out and dedicate all that money to Social Security. And also we've got to fix Medicare. That is going up exponentially as well. So these are all solvable problems. And in my article, I point out how you can get there. It's going to mean taking a little from everybody. Every aspect of life is going to have to change a little bit in order for this to keep from a collapse. What I'm talking about is the whole system will collapse because the government won't be able to borrow enough money. So if you want to avert that, then you have to make changes, and you have to make them right now. The key thing, though, and you made this point, Chris, and you're absolutely right, and it's the point that I make as well, is that you have to grow the economy. That's the only way you're going to solve any problem of resources and of distribution of resources. If you have less resources,
I totally
you're not
agree.
going to be able to redistribute.
But just keep in mind that this is not really a wealth redistribution thing. This is something that people pay into, and then they get something back out of it. So this is not something like food stamps, where I have never been on food stamps in my entire life. So I'm literally basically paying for groceries for other people. This is totally different than that. This is something that, I'll use my dad as an example. He paid in from the 1960s until he retired in the 2000s. And he was told, if you keep making these payments, we will then in turn, give you these payments. That's a contract. The government has to uphold that contract, because you can't just say, sorry, we didn't plan accordingly, Mr. Talbot.
Good luck with that, Chris, because if we go down that path and we say we made these promises, or people before us, because the current Congress has every right to say the people before us made these promises. The current president is.
There has been Social Security reform. I mean, that Reagan got some major Social Security reform done in the 1980s. It's just that we don't have the political backbone to do that right now. But part of the reform was that as the baby boom generation created a surplus, the government spent it and put IOUs in there. So Trump and the current Congress didn't do any of that. That was years ago, and Reagan is responsible for a lot of this, just like anybody else. I mean, they all did it. I'm not sitting here making a political case. I'm making an economic and budget and practical case. Yeah, but there's also
the reality is what's going to happen is they are going to inflate it away. If the resources aren't there, all money does is tell people what resources are worth. So if they need to cut by 22%, they'll cut by 22%. It doesn't matter whether we think it's right or not. They're going to cut by 22%. And the way they're going to do it is the best way possible, the way that nobody will say, okay, I'm really mad at my Congress person, and I'm really mad at my senators because they cut Social Security. No. They're going to say, I'm really mad at the Fed. I'm really mad at the president because this inflation is killing us, because that's what's going to happen. You're going to get your 22% cut. We can do things now that would alleviate that. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's what my recommendations are all about. And especially cutting fraud. That is a huge opportunity to sort of fix a lot of problems in the government right now.
I almost wonder, I'm not a big proponent usually of direct democracy type of situations, but I almost wonder if it wouldn't be fair, at least at the civic side of things, to have some kind of a conference or something where they put together a couple of solid proposals and then put it up to a national popular vote. Because then it's like, well, it's not just, it wouldn't feel like a top-down punishment from the government at that point. Not sure if that's anywhere near feasible, but as I'm listening to these different, different potential futures here, it seems like this is something that you want younger generations as well as older generations to, kind of have a say in. And as many of our our viewers have pointed out, like Chris Nisbet, who's actually not an American citizen, I don't think, but still good to hear, says, what's a promise from a politician worth? And that's a very good point, is that, I think usually Sam is correct on this, is that usually politicians will go for the coward's way out on pretty much all of these, looming catastrophes in our financial situation in this country. They just want to kick the ball further down the field and keep it going. But this is an issue. This is the part of the reason why we wanted this issue to be kind of central to our discussion today, is that this is government causing a problem down the line that they didn't know necessarily that it was going to be a problem down the line. They thought that they were doing a good thing for people to have some kind of a fund for retirement, especially as Chris pointed out during the Great Depression, when it was, completely out of the people's hands that they lost everything. Many people lost everything. And so that was kind of a huge culture shock where people suddenly realized that things can go bad and quickly. And so you can't really...
Can I
yes,
just,
Chris, please.
I think you made a really good point. I don't think that FDR designed Social Security to make all American seniors dependent upon the government. I literally don't think that. I think that he did it from a misbegotten point of view. And I don't think that they, in that point in time, understood the unintended consequences that could come from that. But it's been here for almost a century. And for people who do depend on it, I just feel like we have to do something for that. For people who are still decades away from retiring, like myself, I am willing to accept that I'm not going to get my full Social Security. That is all I'm trying to say here. And I would just wish that they would offer me options.
Yeah. And so this angle is kind of the government's role in your financial security. And our next topic here is government's role in your physical security. So this is more bad news out of the United Kingdom from Hot Air's David Strom. Here come the riots. And I'm sure it'll only get worse this weekend. Anti-immigrant violence erupting in the United Kingdom was as predictable as the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. Keir Starmer and the entire political elite have been trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're ideologically committed to policies that inevitably result in things like the Pakistani rape gangs and violence against white Britons by people who are culturally alien to the country, while they are simultaneously desperate to hide these outrages and suppress debate about multiculturalism and immigration, because they know that hatred and violence will spread as more people comprehend the scale of the problem. The thing is, you can't suppress the rage that's been building forever. There is a breaking point as the disconnect between what the elites say and reality grows ever more obvious, and the indifference, even hostility to the concerns of native Britons, forces people to take things into their own hands. Britons have made their concerns about mass immigration clear for nearly 2 decades, and in that time, the problem only got worse. A big reason the Conservatives were wiped out in the last election was that people were exasperated with them. They kept saying they would address the problem, but only made things worse. The fact that a near beheading took place in Belfast right on the heels of the Henry Novak revelations ensured that this was the moment when the violence erupted. Honesty would have been a much better policy, and allowing Britons to voice their concerns in words might have avoided or mitigated the violence. The cultural and political elite have pushed even moderate Britons closer to the rioters than to themselves by disallowing rational discussion about immigration. When people are forced to be silent about the rape gangs, violence, increasing crime, or even their own Christianity, in order to coddle the feelings of people who clearly hate them, there will come a time when they say enough. Chris, and also Jim after Chris. But my question for this section here is this. Right now, what Britons are feeling is that they're trapped in this horror where they're not allowed to talk about the issues that are surrounding them in their neighborhoods, and in some cases actively harming them, because the government will crack down on them for incitement of anti-immigrant sentiment or something. But at the same time, their own government is totally unwilling to step up and do anything to alleviate those conditions that are making life less safe. It's worse than just negligence, it seems.
All I can say is I'm so glad that I do not live there and I live in the United States of America. And I am so thankful for our freedom of speech and our other freedoms, because I think a lot of Americans do not understand that those awesome rights are not the norm in places across this world. So I'm going to keep it short on this because I'm sure Jim probably has more to say on it. He probably knows more about this than I do. But this is just a reminder for me how blessed I am to be born and living in the United States of America, despite the fact that Social Security is a big problem.
Yeah, Jim, I'm far from an like anarchist type of person. I'm not against policing, even very strong policing typically. But in the UK, you have this weird situation where the police seem totally like feckless and unwilling, really, when it comes to real physical crimes against the populace. But then they'll visit a lady at 3 a.m. and bust her door down because she posted something mean on Facebook. So how long can this kind of a thing be tolerated?
Not much longer. I really don't think so. I mean, somebody tried to, a Somali, I believe, immigrant, tried to behead a man on the streets of
Sudanese,
Belfast.
yeah.
Oh, am I freezing here? Oops, that's great timing.
Love it.
Yeah, so we saw it on video. A Somali immigrant was trying to behead a native son of Belfast, Northern Ireland, on the street with a knife after cutting out one eye and blinding him in the other eye. Ironically, what I heard is the more you're learning about this guy, he actually helped out that immigrant family move in next door, and his thanks for that was to be almost beheaded in the middle of the street in his own hometown. And what was the first prominent police statement about that incident? Please don't share any videos of this on social media because it might upset the families of those involved. Note a couple things there. The families of those involved. He doesn't mean just the victim. He means the perpetrators too, and the community that the perpetrator shares in Belfast. This is not going to go on. This can't go on indefinitely. And it's not just that the voters of the UK have, as you mentioned, Linnea, for 20 years have voted with the message, slow down immigration. It's not that they didn't slow it down, it's that they accelerated it. It is not a radical idea for voters to demand, sometimes loudly, to get what the hell they voted for. And it is not outrageous for people to actually take to the streets, because for 20 years, it's not even that they weren't given what they voted for, but they've been given the opposite of what they voted for. And now, as you said, they have police banging on your door at 3 a.m. because you put a Facebook post up that might offend certain communities in their city or in their country. Certain communities that doesn't include yourself. Native-born UK, it's like everything goes. But if you're an immigrant to the country, you're this protected class. This can't go on forever. This is not, it's not self-governance anymore. It's really tyrannical. And, leftists and leftists in government especially have weaponized the tolerance and the kind nature of the people who have built what we have in the West, which is a tolerant, prosperous society, and one that values law and order, because you can't have freedom and prosperity without law and order. And this leftist mindset that seems to be very bad in the UK, not quite that bad here in the United States, is just the image I have in my head is like somebody opening the hood of the car, just pulling everything that they can get their hands on out of it and expecting that car to still run. It doesn't work that way. And nobody here is advocating for violence. There should be no violence. But I think the shouting in the streets should not end until the people that are supposed to be the protectors of the West and our freedom and our free society that was created over centuries and with money and especially with blood, and to give it all away in the span of a few years, really, in context, is just, the people are not going to put up with it. I think the days of the kindness and the tolerance being expressed or trying to exploit that are over. They're definitely over, I think, in Northern Ireland this week.
The population of Ireland is about 5.3 million. Just in the past 10 years, there have been more than 500,000 people have immigrated to Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. This individual that is identified as the perpetrator of this horrific crime was admitted to the Republic of Ireland and then moved up to Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK. This immigration is largely from places that are very unlike Ireland. And you have an enormous population of people who have no devotion at all to the culture of that country. So what happens is that when you do that, you are creating a big, big problem. You have a culture clash that is fundamental. These are two exceedingly different mindsets in place. And at some point, they're going to be literally at each other's throats. So that is what the government of Great Britain has done in the UK. That's what the government of Ireland has done. And this, folks, this was headed our way under Joe Biden. And if we had not had this past election go the way it went, and the subsequent changes in our immigration policies, this would be happening here in the United States. So they are going to go through an incredible refiner's fire over there in Britain and in Ireland. Obviously, I don't envy them, and I do worry very much for the common people of Britain, and that includes immigrants who do want to assimilate, of which,
Right.
unfortunately, it's a very low proportion of the population of immigrants. But the fact is that the government created this, and then the government said, don't talk about it, or we will put you in prison.
Mhm.
And they did put people in prison, including Tommy Robinson. So this is all government, once again, not doing their job and doing things that they shouldn't do. And we in the US have avoided it so far. It was bad enough. It was bad enough for 4 years, but it would have been absolutely mind-blowingly destructive and disastrous had we had different results in the last election.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think what really burns people up, again, starts to make me angry, is that, it's not immigration per se. It's the volume, but it's also the unwillingness to adapt yourself and to embrace the culture and values of the country that you're going to. Here's a news flash for the left. A human being does not have a universal right to live wherever the hell they feel like living, just because they want to live there. One of the problems here is that we have a responsibility to bring in human rights, people who are being abused by human rights. Okay, maybe. Can we have a discussion about that? About how many and where from and how serious it has to be? The trouble is, a lot of these, so-called human rights migrants are just economic migrants. They just want to live in the UK, or they want to live in the United States because it's going to be better living here than the place that they came from. But, there is no universal right to live somewhere just because you want to. And a country has a right to, one, reject you at the border, or two, after having how about a 93-year trial period? You're not really working out here. I think you're going to have to go back. These are things that a sovereign nation should be able to do. Japan does it. Nobody really, talks about how Japan is very dedicated to keeping Japan like Japan has always been. And it doesn't seem to be an issue. It just seems to be the issue for certain countries around the world, including UK and the United States.
That's right. Producer Andy is in the chat. He says, like and subscribe, you guys. Do it for America. Thank you very much, Andy. Yeah, it was lame, Andy. Thank you. I'll put it up on screen. No, you're right, Jim. And I think, a big portion of this too is just that it was against the explicit desires of the populace. The government just said, no, we're going to do this anyway. The same thing happened here in the United States. And the same thing happened in California. Californians voted against having there's Nigel Farage, a huge quantity of immigration, and their government just decided to steamroll them on all of that as well. This is the
lack of the melting pot. My mom came here from Germany after World War II. She didn't speak English. She got brutally made fun of because of, her clothing and her accent and all that kind of stuff. But you know what she did? She acclimated to the American culture. Okay, that's not what's happening with a lot of immigrants who are coming to America, nowadays. And I get really frustrated when I see what's happening in places like Virginia, where you do have illegal immigrants who should not be here, who are killing American citizens, and then the DA and the governor and other public officials go out of their way to make the legal immigrant as the victim. And that's really, really, I think, starting to rub Americans the wrong way. What happened in Chicago when a New York student was murdered by an illegal immigrant a couple months ago, I think, is starting to really resonate more and more. And, thank God that Donald Trump won the election and, closed the border and, put Tom Homan in charge, because if you do not have a secure border, you don't have a country, like Jim said.
One of the interesting things is how much fraud is being done by immigrants. We saw that in Minnesota, of course, and there is an angle here that does need to be explored if we're going to be honest about things and understand what's really going on, which is not only is there no assimilation, there's a sense in which some people do come to this country and think, hey, these people exploited my country for decades or centuries or millions of years or whatever it is. And so I have a right to go over there and take from them. Now, I don't think that that's factually correct. In fact, I don't accept it in the slightest. But I do acknowledge that that is a thought, and it is a real thought. And does any sensible group of people want to bring that into their, bring that to their bosom? I think not. But when you're really, really ineffective at something, you try shortcuts. And when you're really, really ineffective at governing, you think, well, no sensible person's going to vote for me, so let's import people who will feel obligated.
They're also importing people because they have a huge population problem. This goes back to what we were just talking about with Social Security insolvency and the fact that Western countries, they're not having children at a rate that can actually sustain the population. So this is like a temporary solution to something that I do feel is much deeper. And
yes. Yeah. These places with falling populations and very low birth rates, they all have social security systems. Could there be a connection?
I blame Prussia.
Figure it out.
Prussia's Prussia and their stupid social security system.
That's right. I mean, the broader question,
and their education system too.
When it comes to the role of government, I guess when it comes to public safety like this. We already talked about it with Social Security. They probably shouldn't have gotten involved in public's, financial security in the first place, probably. And now we have this situation, and the government in Britain and in the UK is different than ours. Obviously, they have different priorities, but the question is, who does is the British government's only promise to its citizens that they're not going to let you burn down immigrant housing in neighborhoods, which is terrible. I shouldn't have to say that I'm obviously not in support of riots where they're burning down people's houses, no matter whose houses they are. And the article writer of the Hot Air article, Strom, he made the same point, is that, there are a lot of people who are innocent, who are not causing problems for the country, who are being punished by these riots. And that's always the tragedy of rioting.
This is also suicidal empathy on behalf of Western democracies. And I think that the United Kingdom, I think that some of this is modern people saying, well, we're gonna pay back those immigrants that we exploited with our colonialism and all that stuff hundreds and hundreds of years ago, when that's a very, very farcical argument That's like, saying that we need reparations here in America. You know what? The past is the past. The United Kingdom and the United States have their trying times, but by and large, look at all the good that the United States and the United Kingdom have done in this world, whether it's defeating Nazism. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And it's just really sad that these civilizations don't have more pride in what they've accomplished. And here they are, flagellating themselves. It's sick. It's pathetic.
Chris, this is a really wonderful transition to our America 250 here. So I'm going to transition to it right now. I have a little reading for the audience here. Hopefully it's not. Right this week we're talking about the Intolerable Acts and the Olive Branch Petition, starting with a reading from the Olive Branch Petition, which I think may strike some chords with some of our audience here. But anyway, to the King's most excellent majesty, most gracious sovereign, we, your majesty's faithful subjects of the colonies and the inhabitants who have deputed us to represent them in General Congress, entreat your majesty's attention to our humble petition. The union between our mother country and these colonies produced benefits that the wonder and envy of other nations were excited, while they beheld Great Britain rising to a power the most extraordinary the world had ever known. At the conclusion of the French and Indian War, your loyal, and I added that bit because they just said the war, but that's the war they're talking about. Your loyal colonists, having contributed to its success, doubted not but that they should be permitted, with the rest of the empire, to share in the blessings of peace and the emoluments of victory and conquest. While these recent and honorable acknowledgments of their merits remained on record in the Parliament, undefaced by even the suspicion of any offense, they were alarmed by a new system of statutes and regulations adopted for the administration of the colonies that filled their minds with the most painful fears. We shall decline the ungrateful task of describing the irksome variety of artifices practiced by many of your majesty's ministers, the delusive pretenses, fruitless terrors, and unavailing severities that have been dealt out by them in their attempts to execute this impolitic plan. Your majesty's ministers have compelled us to arm in our own defense. We think ourselves required by indispensable obligation to Almighty God, to your majesty, and to ourselves immediately to use all means in our power for stopping the further effusion of blood. We solemnly assure your majesty that we most ardently desire the former harmony between her and these colonies may be restored. We therefore beseech your majesty that your royal authority and influence may be graciously interposed to procure us relief, that measures may be taken for preventing the further destruction of the lives of your majesty's subjects, and that such statutes might be repealed. That your majesty may enjoy a long and prosperous reign is our sincere and fervent prayer. This is a shortened by me version of the Olive Branch Petition. I encourage you to read the whole thing because there's quite a bit of detail in it that I skipped over, but that was the general gist. It was passed and signed by the Second Continental Congress as a last-ditch effort to avoid all-out war, and it is said that King George III refused to even read it. So if you are an American who attended American public school, you were probably taught that there were 4 particular acts of British Parliament that really tipped the colonies over the edge in 1774. In 1773, a few months earlier, the Sons of Liberty dumped hundreds of chests of tea into the Boston Harbor. Oops. They were protesting the Tea Act and Townshend Acts, which had levied taxes on the colonies without allowing them any representation in Parliament to argue their case against the taxes and their general treatment over time, which was getting worse and worse. Anyway, Parliament was utterly ticked off about the Boston Tea Party, to say the least, and decided to crush the Massachusetts Bay Colony to make an example out of them. So they passed, with King George III's assent, the Boston Port Act, which had the Royal Navy blockade Boston Harbor, one of the most important harbors on the eastern seaboard, from all commercial traffic, exports or imports, except, of course, for Army provisions for the British Army. The Massachusetts Government Act declared that the colony was under illegitimate mob rule, and they stripped of it its ability to self-govern. They placed the Crown's own judges, sheriffs, and juries. And it also banned Massachusetts colony from having town meetings, except for one per year. So they weren't allowed to meet to discuss their grievances. And then the Act for the Impartial Administration of Justice gave the governor the ability to move trials wherever he wanted, which destroyed the concept of the trial by peers, which came from the Magna Carta. And so it was something that was very dear to the British in general. And most famously probably was the Quartering Act, which is the only one that applied to all of the colonies. It demanded that British soldiers be quartered at the colonists' expense, sometimes even in their own homes. Although that part actually wasn't technically required by the act itself, like in the actual primary residence, but it was carried out that way anyway. In many cases, there was very little oversight of how it was carried out. So I bring this up today as an explanation of the years of, trouble that the American colonists put up with, and then the overly heavy-handed responses from their government. King George could have reined in Parliament, but he pretty much did whatever they wanted, thinking that they knew best, and it cost the Brits the United States, and ultimately, I think probably down the line, the entire empire. There's my countdown to 250 monologue. But this all, as I was reading the petition and stuff, it's really kind of heart-wrenching because they really gave so many off-ramps for the British. They were really trying to avoid splitting off or having any kind of armed conflict or anything for a long time. Even after, this is years after the Boston Massacre even, they're still trying to patch things up. And their mother government just wasn't interested. They just wanted to punish them and crush them.
I think it's always important to remember that the American colonies were not united for independence at the beginning. It was actually mostly the New England colonies. Boston really played a role in it, and they had to go and they had to convince the other colonies, especially Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, to enter the revolution with them. And I know that people like John Adams, they get a lot of bad stuff about them written. But thank God that John Adams, Sam Adams, John Hancock, and some of these other very brave Bostonites were able to unite the colonies in the Declaration of Independence, which we are going to be celebrating in 3 weeks. So it's really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there were also many loyalists here, all throughout the revolution. They ended up decamping to Canada. So we are kind of related to, that's why we have a special relationship with Canada, because 250 years ago, we were kind of the same, very much the same boat. But what struck me about that, it's been a long time since I appreciate these reminders, these lessons that I've kind of half forgotten in my life, as they were taught in public school a long time ago. But when you read the part about in the Olive Branch Petition about the Quartering Act, or the things leading up to the Declaration of Independence, the Quartering Act, and what a big deal that was. I mean, can anyone? So there is an amendment in the Bill of Rights. First of all, the Bill of Rights, there were a lot of people against even making the Bill of Rights as part of the U.S. Constitution, because they thought, well, if we lay out 10 bills, if there's a Bill of Rights with 10 things on them, they're going to think that those are the only important things and the government should be able to handle everything else. So there's a big debate on that. But does anyone know? I just gave it away. The Third Amendment. When was the last time the Third Amendment prohibiting the quartering of soldiers in your home without permission? When was the last time that was ever invoked? Or maybe it was never invoked, but it was obviously such a sore spot and so important to the preservation of liberty that they included in the Bill of Rights. I just find that I just find that endlessly fascinating.
Well, I'm sure.
Yeah, because just real quick, I mean, I'm a U.S. history teacher. I'm a U.S. history fiend. Can you imagine that it's 1774 and you are told these British soldiers are going to go in your home. They're probably actually going to sleep in your bed. They're going to eat your food, and you basically have to make sure that they have everything they need. And if you have anything left over, maybe you can take care of your family. Can you imagine being told that as an American, family in the colonies? No wonder these people, did what they did.
Interestingly, I think there are applications of the Third Amendment that expand well beyond the quartering of soldiers. If you try to take that principle further, the government has a tendency to act as if your property is theirs, and the quartering of soldiers is simply one most vivid example, and quite terrifying, because they're not quartering what do you call it, people who are ill or something, which would be bad enough, of course. They're not quartering people. They're quartering people who would kill you if you dispute this. So I think that it is an important amendment, even though it hasn't been explicitly an issue a lot of times. It sets a principle that is important for us to remember. The government doesn't own your property. What they own is the responsibility to protect your property. And they often do the opposite, all too often do the opposite.
Yeah, I wanted to, highlight these, first of all, because they're some of the, the kind of the final straws, I guess, in it turning towards all-out war. And Chris, you're
I'm
so
sorry.
good.
Go ahead.
I'm jazzed that you're.
I'm just going back to all my teaching stuff, and it was really interesting because the Intolerable Acts were meant to punish Boston primarily, and what John Adams did, and Sam Adams and John Hancock, because they told the other colonists, if this can happen to us, it can happen to you, and that was a really powerful argument for those people who were on the fence, especially in the southern colonies, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, because they had not felt the wrath of the king like the people in Boston had. So the people in Boston, they were the ones who were really the gung-ho revolutionaries from the early, like I would actually say from the late 1760s up until the 1776 when it actually took place. But they were the ones who were really driving that. And the Intolerable Acts and shutting down the port of Boston, guys, John Hancock, what was he? He was a bootlegger. That was crushing his business. So when they were told, actually, you can't import or export any fine wines or goods or anything, that made people like John Hancock, who had an import-export business, say, you know what? They're not only suppressing my freedom, but they're basically saying you can't even, have a livelihood anymore. And had it not been for stuff like that, who knows if we would have, had the Declaration of Independence in the way we did, as we did, when we did. So I just was always trying to make sure that the students understood how awesome it was that these people put their lives on the line, their fortunes, their families, because they just knew that what was happening was unjust and that the king was not treating them equally. And, it's just 250 years ago, just think about this, guys. 250 years ago, the status quo was divine rule. These people said, wait a second, that's not right. Why can't we have the ability to actually govern ourselves? That's only been really happening for 250 years in the whole giant span of human history. So when you really think about it like that, this is just a blink in the eye of the human story. America's awesome. We're about to celebrate 250 years of this. I just really hope that, we've got a couple more weeks that Americans really, just celebrate and have an awesome 4th of July. I really, really hope so.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Chris. So, the mother government of this great country, the British, laid heavy burdens and suffering on the colonists. And when those burdens were protested, they ground their heel in even further. Even then, the men of our Second Continental Congress reached out to try to mend things again, asking for the original grievances to be addressed, but promising loyalty to the crown, and that too was rejected. That was July 5th, 1775. 1 year later, the Declaration of Independence would be signed and all of the colonies would come into line looking for independence. So We are getting there, you guys. This is a fantastic month leading up to a fantastic holiday, but that is all the time we have for today, unfortunately. So thank you, everyone, for your attention to these matters. We are live every week on Thursdays at noon Central on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all over the place. Jim, what do you have for the audience today?
We have tomorrow, the Climate Realism Show, Godzilla El Nino. If you're a real weather nerd, you should have some fun.
All right, Sam.
Thank you. Heartland.org. We've got plenty of great stuff on there today. And also sdkarnik.substack.com, as you can see right in front of you there.
And Chris?
I just want to tell the viewers that Jim and I are going to play in a golf tournament on Monday, and Donnie Kendall, the former host, will be attending this dinner, and Jim and I are going to have a blast.
All right, awesome. Good luck. For audio listeners, please rate us well on whatever service you're using and leave a review. Thank you so much to all of our usual panelists, and also, as always, to our viewers. We will see you again next week.